Getting breaking news that the NDA government may be readying for a big climb down on its flagship land acquisition bill. Sources reveal that the government is likely to go back to the UPA 2013 land bill retrospectively. Land return review of clause will be discussed. In fact, Congress, the CPIM and JDU have been seeking a total withdrawal of proposed changes by the NDA government in the 2013 Land Act. The opposition wants the inclusion of some additional measures to further strengthen the law in favor of the farmers. Some clauses of the UPA 2013 land bill are likely to be accepted or accommodated by the NDA government, including social impact assessment clause and complaint clause. In fact, the social impact assessment and the consent clause are the two clauses that the government is now taking a look at accepting, or rather re-accommodating them in the present land bill. Remember, this will in a larger aspect take it back close to what the bill was in 2013 when the UPA had passed it. Remember, there was a consent clause which said that there should be a consent by the farmers or the owners of the land to give up their piece of land. And also social impact assessment clause that looked at the repercussions of the government acquiring land for a certain project and the livelihood of those who are dependent on that land for their livelihood. So those are the two clauses that the government may now accept, which were originally there in the 2013 land acquisition bill. The government had put it out of the present bill, is now ready to accept them. This comes as a big climb down by the government on the land acquisition bill. Remember, the opposition had been unrelenting on letting the present bill pass in the form that it was, because it had kicked out the social impact assessment clause as well as the consent clause, which the opposition said was very crucial for the well-being of the farmers in the country and those who essentially have agricultural land. Executive Editor Javed Ansari is now joining us with more details. Javed, what has triggered this climb down by the government? Because earlier it was said that the Prime Minister himself was not in favor of any climb down on the land acquisition bill.
Well, what has really forced this climb down is the realization, acceptance of ground reality, the acknowledgement that they do not have the support in Parliament for this piece of legislation. Majority of the MPs in Parliament are opposed to this bill. This would have been a highly unpopular move. Therefore, the government's attempt to try and steamroll have failed. It now acknowledges that a lot of the MPs, including some of their own, are not entirely comfortable with this piece of legislation, and therefore they've chosen discretion to be the better part of valor and stepped back. Now this begs the question, if indeed they had to do this, then why go through this whole rigmarole? They could have just accepted the 2013 legislation that was passed, brought about by the UPA government and passed with the help of the BJP.
Right, Javed. So what are we hearing at this point? What are the clauses that the government is willing to accept or accommodate in the present bill?
This is the compensation clause, is the social responsibility clause, social impact clause, and also the big thing now what we are hearing is that the government could leave it to the states. One way out of this rigmarole, of this imbroglio, could be that you leave it to the states, individual states, to pass appropriate laws on land acquisition. Some states have already begun acquiring land, but they've done it in a manner without creating too much of a problem. Mr. Chandrababu Naidu in the Andhra Pradesh has acquired about over 20,000 acres of land, 27,000 acres of land. He's done it. He's done it through private parties because he wants to build a new capital for the state. Similarly, in Uttar Pradesh, for the Agra to Lucknow highway, the Akhilesh government has acquired land. It's paying the farmers handsome amount. Not just have they hiked the circle rate, but they're giving them 4 times, as envisaged in the bill, 4 times the price of the land. So therefore, the farmers are getting a huge return, and the farmers are quite happy doing it. Nobody would object, at least the political parties opposing the bill at the moment would not object if the farmers are on board.
Right.
It's the BJP's attempt to dilute the previous bill which had caused it to run into rough weather.
Javed, also the Niti Aayog meeting that was held just before Parliament was starting, which had largely been attended by the BJP chief ministers, did they make it amply clear to the Prime Minister at that point that it was very difficult for them to implement this?
Look, publicly all the BJP ministers, the chief ministers have been supporting it. Privately, a lot of BJP MPs, MLAs have a very different opinion, and I'm sure they have at appropriate forums conveyed this to the House. But what has really compelled and brought about this change is the acknowledgement that the BJP will not be able to force this. And if they try and steamroll it through a joint session, then the political cost for that would have been, which have been very heavy. They would have had to pay a very heavy price. And therefore, on the eve, and let's not forget, this decision has also been taken with an eye on the forthcoming Bihar elections. This is an issue which Mr. Nitish Kumar, Mr. Lalu Prasad Yadav of the Congress were going to town with. They were using this as a part of their campaign against the ruling party at the centre. So very wisely, the centre has now, the BJP has now decided to take a step back on that.
Right. Javed, also, would you call it political pragmatism at this point in time, or a clear climb down by the government?
I mean, call it what you will. You can call it both. They have realized this. They ought to have realized this from day one, that they do not have the numbers, certainly not in the Rajya Sabha, and therefore this would have been extremely. And then the fact that the opposition is led by the Congress, they built up a lot of steam on this issue. They've campaigned vigorously amongst the people, and this has become a very popular issue with the masses. So you can, the BJP then probably has done a cost-benefit analysis and come to the conclusion that steamrolling its passage in Parliament could have been counterproductive, and therefore they've decided to step back. They've decided to step back and live to fight another day in Parliament.
All right, let me quickly tell our viewers that the latest update that we're getting is that some clauses of UPA 2013 land bill will be accepted or be accommodated by the NDA government, including the social impact assessment clause and the consent clause, which was removed by the government. In fact, the government had brought in ordinances much to the annoyance of the opposition, after which the bill was brought and the opposition stuck to its stand that they are looking for a social impact assessment and consent clause that must be included in the land acquisition bill. Otherwise, the opposition will stand against it. Javed Ansari saying that it's the numbers that they were falling short of in Rajya Sabha have now forced the government on a climb down over this issue. Consulting editor Rajdeep Sardesai is also now joining us with more details. Rajdeep, looking at what has happened today in Parliament, the suspension of Congress MPs and the image that was now, coming across of the government being very stuck up in some sense, do you think all that has also perhaps led to the government now doing a climb down on the land acquisition bill?
Look, I think there are two different issues, and I think we should play both out. I think the important news story of today, frankly, Maha, is the fact that 25 Congress MPs have been suspended, something which hasn't happened in a very long time in Parliament, and you're right, there is a complete logjam in Parliament. I think you have to link that to the fact, I don't think you can link that right away to this climb down. I think the climb down is more in keeping with the kind of propaganda which is working on the ground at the moment, that the land bill of the kind that Narendra Modi's government is bringing is anti-farmer. Ahead of the Bihar elections, the government doesn't want to send out the impression that it is anti-farmer, which is why at the moment they've taken one step back. This is what sources are saying. Let's be clear. We don't know the exact contours of the climb down, but the sense one is getting is that the NDA government, Narendra Modi's government, doesn't want this Bihar election to become in some way an opportunity for the opposition to suggest that the NDA government is anti-farmer, which is why you are seeing this climb down. They perhaps believe that they could fight another battle in the winter session of Parliament. At the moment, the government believes it's not in their interest to push the land bill. In any case, now that there is a logjam in Parliament, the bill will not pass.
Yes.
The GST bill will not pass. I think our viewers need to realize what the implications of what has happened today inside Parliament. If this boycott of the opposition parties continues for the next 5 days, it means that the monsoon session is a washout and all the important legislation which was planned has gone out of the window.
Right.
I know we are saying major victory for Sonia Gandhi and Rahul, but let's be clear. At the end of the day, the real challenge is the Bihar elections. How is this going to play out in the Bihar elections in October, November?
Let's also get in a word from Deputy Editor Brijesh Pandey, who's getting us more details. Brijesh, what are your sources saying about the clauses that the government might now include in the present land acquisition bill, which they were not in agreement to earlier?
What we have been told is, and it's not yet confirmed, but what we are being told is that the consent clause might see a revival, though the percentage might vary. But the consent clause, which was removed earlier, might stage a comeback. And apart from that, the social impact assessment might also make a comeback. Basically, apart from opposition parties, there were also fringe outfits, organizations related to RSS, also, who were very much opposed against the land acquisition ordinance, which the government was wanting to bring in. And an organization like Bharatiya Mahasangh, which is the largest labor organization in India, and apart from that, Swadeshi Jagran Manch, they all were very much vehemently opposed to. And as Rajdeep was just saying, the biggest challenge for the government right now is not whether they end up accepting the bill or going back to the UPA land bill. The biggest challenge for them is Bihar election, and most of the stuff which is being done right now, as of now, is basically aimed at winning the Bihar election.
Right.
And they have been saying that they cannot run the risk of being seen as someone who is anti-farmer.
Okay, I'll pick that point that Brijesh is making, Rajdeep, about some of the RSS-affiliated organizations being against it. At Niti Aayog, the chief ministers from BJP-ruled states also said it's very difficult for them to implement it. Do you see this as some sort, if it is implemented, do you see this as some sort of a defeat for the Prime Minister himself, who was keen that the bill goes as the present government wants?
I think it will be a climb down. I wouldn't use the word defeat. It certainly would be a climb down. But what is interesting, Maha, is that in a number of states, already at the state government level, private real estate developers or private companies are already striking independent deals with farmers. A few deals have been struck in Haryana, some have been struck in Punjab. In different states, farmers are already working on the basis of the 2013 land acquisition bill, and various state governments are already doing these transactions. Therefore, I have it on from a few BJP leaders that at the state level there was an increasing concern that state chief ministers were voicing that let's not get into a battle in Delhi. We can get if we can get these transactions done and push ahead with major infrastructure projects, allow the state governments to do it. Why do you need a central legislation? This is another argument which was made. It has been made in the Niti Aayog, and it's being made by several chief ministers to Mr. Modi. Yes, it's a climb down if this goes ahead and the social impact clause as well as the consent clause is brought back as envisaged by the UPA. But I think you climb down to fight another day. I think the Prime Minister has realized that at the moment the mood among farmer communities is such that they do not want any bill pushed through. Yes. Certainly the MPs don't want that. They are allowing the state governments to have the benefit of trying to strike their own independent private transactions based on the 2013 law. And therefore you will perhaps have a situation where this bill will certainly not now see the light of day, at least in this session of Parliament.
All right, let me go back briefly to Brijesh Pandey again. Brijesh, if Bihar elections were indeed one of the major reasons why the government is making this climb down, wouldn't the Congress be able to use it as a victory for themselves? After all, it is the concerted effort of the opposition that they may project it as a victory for themselves.
Well, Congress will definitely try to project it as a victory for itself. But, as Rajdeep was saying, the Congress is not that much of a player in Bihar. And right now, the BJP is in a situation where, one wrong move can cost them more dear than any particular this thing being owned up by the Congress as victory. So the BJP is thinking that right now, the Bihar election is the most important election. And it is putting in everything it has because it knows that if they lose Bihar election, then it will be almost be curtains for the government. The government authority will be severely undermined, and that's the reason the government doesn't want to take any chance whatsoever. So they have basically agreed for this climb down, as Rajdeep was saying, to fight another day.
All right, let me also go to Executive Editor Javed Ansari. Javed, what is the kind of opposition that we've seen to this bill that the government was trying to push through of land acquisition, and what are the talks that have taken place behind the scenes?
Let's not make any mistake about this. The government moved heaven and earth. They tried to talk to individual parties. Mr. Jaitley is famous for his back-channel contacts, for his cross-party linkages. He took it upon himself to bring around parties. So they worked on the Samajwadi Party. They tried to work on the BSP, the AIDMK, the BJD. But ultimately, all that came to a naught because they were just not getting the numbers right. And the Congress, on the other hand, not just inside Parliament, but they raised the pitch outside Parliament as well, making it very difficult for parties that were sitting on the fence to support this measure. There was so much of pressure, like Rajdeep was saying, that this has become a very popular issue with the farmers. The farmers were very upset over this, and therefore anybody who wanted to even help the BJP couldn't do so out of fear for risking the displeasure of the farmers. So therefore, public opinion and also the arithmetic in both houses of Parliament has compelled the BJP to read the writing on the wall and to step back.
Rajdeep, the government seems to be pushed to a corner at this point. The climb down on the land acquisition bill that is likely now, and also the fact that the opposition today says that it is not Sumitra Mahajan alone who's deciding about the suspension of the 25 Congress MPs. They say that it's because the government has failed to reach a consensus with the opposition that this situation arose, clearly pointing the fingers at the government rather than taking on the speaker.
You know, this suspension, and I think we should also flash that on our screen. I think this is an important moment. What has happened, Maha, is effectively what was happening in the Gujarat Assembly. Narendra Modi is very clear. He tends to draw Lakshman Rekha on such issues. He is making it very clear by ensuring the suspension of these MPs that the government is not going to yield an inch anymore. They've tried to hold all party meetings. The opposition is also unrelenting. But Modi wants to send out a message that he is going to now take a maximalist position, even if it means a complete breakdown and a washout of this monsoon session of Parliament. Interestingly, the Congress, on the other hand, is going to use this to suggest that Mr. Modi is a dictator. So while the government is calling the opposition irresponsible, the Congress-led opposition is calling Mr. Modi a dictator who is dictating terms to the Speaker and to Parliament. We also, interestingly, now have a situation where parties like the Trinamool...
Rajdeep, I'll just hold you there for a bit. We're getting NCP's Tariq Anwar on the phone line with us. Sir, the Aam Aadmi Party and the TMC have said that they are going to, in solidarity with the Congress MPs who have been suspended for 5 days, boycott Parliament. Will the NCP also take some step in the same manner?
Yes, NCP has decided to go with the Congress, and we will also show our solidarity with the Congress party. And I think this is the beginning of the black day.
Mr. Anwar, you know, the NCP is also, you're saying, going to boycott Parliament for the next 5 days. But what's going to be the strategy from here on for the opposition?
We will go with the opposition party, and whatever they will decide, we will support them.
Do you think today's move has brought the opposition together? Even the Samajwadi Party, which so far said that they want a discussion and not a resignation, is now sticking with the opposition more than what they did earlier?
I think mostly opposition parties, namely TMC, Congress, NCP, RJD, and all other parties, they are supporting this move, and we all are together. It shows our solidarity.
Tariq, Mr. Anwar, do you think that the government is behaving in a dictatorial fashion?
Of course, it is a Gujarat model. They are trying to implement at the national level now, and I am sure that the people of India will not accept this type of dictatorial attitude of any party or any government.
All right. Many thanks, Mr. Tariq Anwar, for speaking with India today. The NCP is also going to be boycotting Parliament, is what he says, in solidarity with the 25 Congress MPs who have been suspended for 5 days by Speaker Sumitra Mahajan today. Let me go across to Congress spokesperson Priyanka Chaturvedi as well. What's going to be the strategy of the Congress now? 25 of your MPs have been suspended for the next 5 days. Solidarity being shown by TMC. Aam Aadmi Party and the NCP. But where do you go from here on?
No, the strategy would be decided by all our parliamentarians, and it is obvious for all to see how arbitrarily the decision was taken to suspend our MPs without giving a chance to hear us out, to even talk on discussions or topics that we had been raising continuously inside the parliament. And this kind of decision has definitely backfired on the BJP. And the Speaker also needs to introspect if this was, I would say, true spirit of what democracy is all about. You cannot suspend dissenting voices. You give them a chance to speak, which you haven't really allowed ever since the parliament session began.
All right, Priyanka Chaturvedi, many thanks for speaking with India Today. We're taking a very quick break now. News and updates will continue on India Today. Stay with us.